Did you know that Alexander Graham Bell is likely not truly the first inventor of the modern telephone? Sometimes history rewards not the innovator, but the person who can afford the paperwork. Let's take a look at another gentleman and consider if he might be who we should thank for the tiny devices that we all carry today. Antonio Giuseppe Meucci was born in Florence, Italy on April 13, 1808. He was the eldest of 9 children, born to Amadis Meucci and Domenica Pepe. In November of 1821, at just 13 years old, Antonio became the youngest student ever admitted to the Florence Academy of Fine Arts. For 2 years, he studied chemical and mechanical engineering full-time until he could no longer do so due to not having enough money for tuition. Rather than give up, however, the determined 15-year-old Antonio got a job as an assistant gatekeeper and customs official for the Florentine government so that he himself could pay to continue his education at the academy part-time. He may have had a good head on his shoulders and a strong sense of responsibility, but that didn't stop Antonio from finding himself arrested in May of 1825 when he lost control of some fireworks he was experimenting with to celebrate the birth of the Grand Duke of Tuscany's child. The fireworks caused damage to public property and injuries to some people, and Antonio found himself suspected of conspiracy against the Grand Duchy. In 1834, while working at the Teatro della Pergola in Florence as a stage technician, Antonio devised an acoustic pipe telephone that allowed for communication between the stage and the control room. Think of a kid's playground that has a setup where a child whispers into one pipe and a kid all the way on the other side of the playground can hear the whisper through another pipe. This telephone is still usable today. While employed at the theater, he met and fell in love with a costume designer named Esther Meucci. They were married on August 7, 1834. Just over a year later, in October 1835, Antonio and Esther fled to Havana, Cuba, a move prompted by rising political tensions and his recent 3-month-long imprisonment for alleged ties to the Italian unification movement. In Havana, Antonio began working as chief engineer at a theater known as Teatro Tacon, which he would go on to help reconstruct. Perhaps more impressive even than helping to reconstruct what was at the time considered the greatest theater in the Americas was his construction of a water purification system for the drinking water and fountain systems of the Tacon Opera House, another hotspot for entertainment in Havana. This purification system ensured clean drinking water for the opera house's patrons. But Antonio wasn't just designing and inventing for theaters. It was also during his time in Havana that he took his first steps toward becoming the true father of the modern telephone by unintentionally inventing what he called the telegrafo parlante, or talking telegraph, in 1849. To be fair, he wasn't even actually trying to invent a way to transmit human voice, but rather was working on Franz Anton Mesmer's method of therapy to treat rheumatism with electric shock. His interest in treating rheumatism likely stemmed from his own wife's battle with it, which was severe enough to keep her largely confined to her bed. Some of history's greatest breakthroughs have come by accident, and Antonio's was no different. The transmitted voice was not able to be understood, but was unmistakably the voice spoken into the device. An incredible discovery! But his impressive inventions couldn't shield Antonio from political scrutiny, as the Cuban government was now growing suspicious of him due to his friendship with General Giuseppe Garibaldi, which I suppose makes his previous imprisonment for conspiring with the Italian unification movement all the more believable, since General Garibaldi was a huge contributor to the movement himself. Maybe I'll do a story on him at some point. What do you guys think? The growing danger to Antonio and his wife, coupled with his interest in the inventions of an American man named Samuel F.B. Morse, after whom Morse code is named, prompted Antonio to decide on moving once again. In what would be their final relocation, Antonio and his wife settled in Staten Island, New York, on his birthday, April 13th, 1850. By 1870, Antonio went on to develop 30 types of telephone patents as a means to communicate with his bedridden wife while still being able to work on inventions in his workshop in another part of the house. It was his love and dedication to Astaire that fueled his efforts on the communication device. In 1871, satisfied that he had something worthwhile, Antonio registered a patent for his teletrofono. Sometime after this point, an explosion on a ferry left Antonio seriously burned, and in a desperate attempt to pay for his medical expenses, Astaire sold his designs and prototypes. He was never able to retrieve any of his schematics or models, but was left deeply in debt in spite of Astaire's efforts to keep them afloat. Heartbreakingly, he was still in this position when his patent was due for renewal. Barely getting by already, Antonio was unable to pay the $10 fee to re-register his designs. Waiting in the wings, the wealthy Alexander Graham Bell, who had previously worked with Antonio, did have the means to pay, and he filed new patents on Antonio's designs, rebranding the design as the graphophone, a name change that helped distance it from Meucci's work while cementing Bell's legacy in U.S. history, at least for more than a century, as the father of the modern telephone. What started out as a symbol of Antonio Meucci's love and dedication for his ailing wife was stolen from him by wealth and greed, as is so often the case throughout human history. Italian historians have proclaimed Antonio Meucci's rightful role as the telephone's inventor all along. But we Americans seem to really love taking credit for other people's hard work. And it wasn't until 2002 that the U.S. House of Representatives acknowledged Antonio Meucci's contribution to the invention of the telephone, stating in United States House Resolution 269 on Antonio Meucci that if Meucci had been able to pay the $10 fee to maintain the caveat after 1874, no patent could have been issued to Bell. But even with this acknowledgement, they did nothing further to strip the vulturous Bell of his credit by nullifying the patents in his name, and House Resolution 269 died in the Senate with nothing further coming of it. It's pretty unbelievable to me that phones play such a huge role in our everyday lives, and yet most people don't even truly know who to thank for them. Personally, I think we should give credit where it is due and embrace Antonio Meucci as the true father of the modern telephone. Don't you? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you believe people like Antonio Meucci deserve to be remembered, not erased, hit that like button, drop a comment, and share this story with someone who loves a good underdog. And if you enjoyed this nibble of history and would like to sample more in the future, please hit subscribe and ring that bell so that you never miss a video. It would mean so much to me. Thanks, everybody.